Hello everyone, today we find ourselves in Generation 2, the less glitchy but updated version of Generation 1 Pokemon games. Despite some changes, there are still plenty of glitches to explore in the Generation 2 games. You might remember I did a couple of tips and tricks videos for Generation 1, and now I think it's time to do that for the Generation 2 games. So here we have 8 tips and tricks for Pokemon Gold and Silver, involving glitches in some way much like the prior videos, which I recommend seeing if you haven't already. Anyway, let's get started. So the first tip's going to involve saving in front of the 3 Pokeballs you can get at the start of the game. We're going to choose a starter, and then go through the game as normal. This might be something familiar you've seen in a prior video of mine, but I'm going to show it in better detail here. So like I said, we're going to play through the game as normal. That pretty much involves just going to Mr. Pokemon's house, fighting the rival, and then going back to Professor Elm's lab, to where the aide that he has will give you some Pokeballs, which is the primary reason for coming back here. So a fun tip, in a prior video, I said you to do this like 3 times, but if you only go through it once, you can catch some wild Pokemon, which is exactly what you want to do. And if you catch enough to bring over to your original save, you only have to do it like 1.5 times. We'll see that in a moment here, what I mean by that. And then you'll actually notice here that I already did this once before. Because you'll see I chose Chikorita, but I totally have a Totodile on the PC there. This is a method of getting all 3 starters in one save file. So you can see I have some extra Pokemon as well. So what you would do is essentially just catch some extra Pokemon and do this step here. You'll box a couple of them to save for the next save you'll go into. We'll have it to where we only have 1 Pokemon left and the Pokemon we want to keep in the box. You can see that here. So simply we'll just do the clone glitch. That involves changing the boxes using the PC, and it will save the game, but you're going to interrupt that. I typically do that in like the power word, like where it says POW, but it doesn't really matter anywhere in between there. It's much easier to do in Gold and Silver. It's much more difficult in Crystal. So now I'm going to choose the last starter I do not have. And once again, play through the game as normal. In this case, it's easy. We'll just go straight to Cherry Grove and get the PC that way. And so I have all 3 starters now. Now I'm going to empty out the box and fill up the party. Because this has a pretty fun effect if you don't fight the rival before doing this. So yeah, speaking of which, we'll go into battle with him with our 5 Pokemon. To make this fight very unfair. Not like you'd ever really struggle with the rival battle in this game, because you actually get time to prepare for it. Unlike in Gen 1 where you get jumped immediately. So yeah, I don't really like having that type disadvantage there, so we're going to switch into Chikorita with a grass type move and make this battle very easy. And this is what's so awesome about this tip here, is just getting all 3 stars at the beginning of the game. It's fantastic. It's a good start having grass, water, and fire right off the bat. Let alone starters, they're typically stronger than your usual Pokemon. I know it's debatable whether the Johto stars are any good. I think even to this day, Chikorita is considered to be one of the weakest starters in the series. It's still a really cool Pokemon. Anyway, there is a pretty neat effect we can get from getting all these Pokemon at the start and setting up this glitch. Because you can't normally do it. If you go into Route 29, after getting the Pokeballs, this guy will try to show you how to catch a Pokemon. And when the party is full and the box is full, some interesting effect can happen here. So it's going to say the Pokemon box is full, it can't be used now. And then that odd effect happens there, which it was pretty quick, so I will show a slowdown of what happened. This isn't much of a tip, but it's a neat little thing that I've shown before, but I figured I might as well include it here, because like I said, it really only shows up once you do this type of glitch. So this next trick is about as pure as a trick can get. It's literally the daylight savings exploit, and it's very easy to do. This only occurs in games that have daylight savings. As you saw there, when I switched it, I got a phone call. And that's the whole point of this exploit, or this trick, is to increase the rate that you receive phone calls, because it goes faster than just normally waiting. But there is an issue. There's a trap involved with this, to where if you were to change the time to where it would change the day, so for example, if it was 11 something standard time, it won't work, or if it's daylight savings time after midnight or 12, it would not work, because it would decrease the time by an hour, or if we're going from standard time to daylight savings, it would add an hour. And fun fact, this does not exist in Japanese games. And as you saw, it doesn't always work every time, but it does work more efficiently than normally waiting. So it's worth doing if you're waiting for a phone call from somebody. So you'll see here that it will work once again. And we'll get a call from Alan, the schoolboy. Now it's time to talk about some catch rate glitches in Generation 2. We're going to go into battle for that. So it's actually great we find Magnemite right away. I'm going to go for a Sleep Powder, but it is going to miss, unfortunately. But what's nice, so we'll notice that Magnemite fled. It's kind of a unique characteristic for some Pokemon in this game, but we'll go back to that soon. For now I'm going to look for another battle. And so Rattata's just fine for this. What I want to do is put the Rattata to sleep, but before doing that, I'm actually going to just yeet a Moon Ball at it. The Moon Ball is messed up in Generation 2. So what it's supposed to do is to check to see if the Pokemon evolves via Moonstone. However, it checks the wrong item in Generation 2 because the address is actually technically different. In Generation 1, they use the address 0 times 0A, so like 10 for example. And it's the Moonstone Gen 1, but they actually changed how the list is in Gen 2 so it corresponds to Burn Heal. And as far as we know, there's not a single Pokemon that evolves via Burn Heal. You'll actually notice here too that it caught the Rattata, which was pure luck, because it did not provide any form of catch rate increase for that Rattata. Now we find a Farfetch. As I was mentioning about sleep, once again I'm going to throw another Moon Ball at it. And it should not catch it. Like I said, it was kind of a fluke with the Rattata. So we're going to put the Farfetch to sleep and try again. And just like that, we caught the Pokemon. So sleep is supposed to increase catch rate as intended. Same with freezing, but however that is not the case for burn, poison, or paralysis in Gen 2. Now it's time to talk about the Love Ball. So you would think the Love Ball would work for the same species Pokemon but opposite gender. So let's throw it a couple times and see what happens. So it broke out once, but it seemed like it was close. Let's try again. And once again, after 3 shakes, the other Eradicate will break out. But what's interesting is that it's messed up in Generation 2, wouldn't you have guessed it? So the catch rate of the Love Ball is a little messed up. It's actually supposed to work on the same gender Pokemon. What's kind of sad is it did not work first try here with the other Eradicate, the male one, and it is based off your Pokemon. So it's based off the species and the gender of the Pokemon, and since we have the same Pokemon, the same gender, it will work this time. So I guess you could say that they accounted for homosexuality in Gen 2. So once again, we're going to encounter another Magnemite. And that's very good because Magnemite's a Pokemon that can flee, as we saw earlier. Unfortunately, it's not going to go to sleep for us, so I'm just going to say the hell with it and throw a Fastball. So what the Fastball is supposed to work on are Pokemon that can flee. Magnemite, Grimer, and Tangela. And that is because those Pokemon, to their respective lists of sometimes flees, often flees, and always flee Pokemons, The game is messed up in a way where it only takes into account the first Pokemon of those categories, so it only works on those 3 Pokemon. Yeah, it's kind of messed up. But that's all for the catch rate glitches. The next step requires a handful of things, and the first thing you want to get is the coin case, which is in the underground underneath Goldenrod. After that, it's good to head to the game corner if you don't already have a coin total that starts with 1. So for example, 100, 150, 1000, 1500, whatever you want. After that, it's good to go into the radio tower, because that's where most things are going to go down. You want to change your boxes. Now I'm not going to go into super detail about this because it is pretty in-depth and that's not the main focus of this video, but it's such a good tip that it's worth including in here. It's so useful. I'll rather link a video in the description that I highly recommend checking out. And once again, big shout out to Team OVM for this. But I will show you the basics here. So once you have the coin case, the box is set up, and a Pokemon Flower Mail. Go to that location there and save your game. You also want to make sure you have the entries in the Pokédex for at least Bellsprout or Machop. You'll move to that location there. I already have Bellsprout ready here. Just listen to its cry. You can either click on cry or just open it by selecting on it. Then you have the flower mail I mentioned with this code on any Pokemon. Then you go into the bag, switch the bag at least once, then go in the coin case, use it, and that will actually cause something interesting. So in the first slot of our item bag will actually change, so it's important to put an item you don't really care about there. And here's the really simple part of like this coin case glitch, where at least this part gives you every TM in the game and 255 of it. But to continue on with what we're going to do, we'll have to change the quantities by selling, which takes a bit of time, as all the TMs seem to need a random quantity remaining. So be sure to check out that video in the description, it'll make it much easier to set up. Now this actually leads us nicely to our next tip, because when we get that ROM Pocket TM at the beginning of the item bag, TM33, we can open that to use the Mail Rider, which is the next tip I'm going to show you. And this is a great one because you can do a lot with this, it's pretty insane. So you'll see here we're putting in a code. Once again, Team OVM has a whole page on the Glitch City Wiki that I'll put in the description because it'll help you walk through this much better. So like one good example is that when you get to the end here, if you hit select after the checksum comes up, which was that symbol there at the end, we can add another mail. The whole point of this mail is to actually allow us to use this without solely relying on how the TM pocket is laid out. It'll also make it to where all the TMs in there are cleaned up to where there's one of each. So now we can successfully obtain TMs outside battle, because if you do that before doing this, it causes some issues and it's kind of a pain. So this is a necessary step, that's why I'm showing it here. But there's some pretty good walkthroughs on that page I mentioned in case you have issues with this part. It's just laid out so nicely, it'll help with any troubleshooting issues you have. So after we do that, we'll check our TM bag and we'll see that it's now cleaned up. And now we can use this pretty much however we want. And so to start off, I'm going to put in another code, and this one's pretty awesome. It's always important to make sure you double check yourself. I actually made a mistake here, and then I didn't realize until the very end of that line, that is. And that's my recommendation whenever doing this, is to complete one line at a time. So go through the top one, make sure it's good, and then move on to the next one. It makes it a little less overwhelming, especially when you're double checking yourself. So once we complete that, once again we'll get another checksum. Something interesting will happen here. It's asking us to give a nickname to Celebi, which is really strange because it just randomly gave us a Celebi. It totally did. So if you look at that, there we go, Celebi. And the best part is, this does register them into the Pokédex. But now let's see another code that's pretty awesome. We're also going to get a time change here thanks to the natural daylight cycle in this game. So once again, I'm going to speed put in one more code. Not going to show this much more because it's kind of pointless. You get the point. You just put stuff in the way it's supposed to be. The resource I mentioned will show you everything you need to know. And then the checksum at the end, you have to double check. And so you'll notice here, we're able to use something, but nothing's available. But if we use it on a Pokemon that can evolve via trade, it will. like this Kadabra for example. And that's exactly what that code does, is it allows a Pokemon that evolves via trade without having to do the required trade. And so just like that, we have an Alakazam, without even having to have 2 games. It's pretty awesome. You'll also notice that it cuts the music out when you're done. I think it has something to do with the fact that the way that the trade evolution takes place, there's supposed to be a way it comes back normally, but since it's not a normal version of that, it kind of glitches out. But once we go back onto a different route or in a building, the music change will allow the music to come back. It's just really eerie though. It also takes a second for it to come back. But this brings us nicely into the next tip, where we need to find a Ditto. And that's not a Ditto, so let's find one. There we go. So we're gonna set up what's called the Pursuit Revival glitch. It's a little oversight that happens with Pursuit. Now it's a bit tricky to set up because unfortunately my Pidgey has 3 moves and Ditto can use them at random. So what I need to do is have my Pidgey, which is best poisoned in my opinion. It could be other things though, it doesn't have to be poison. Once Pidgey gets low enough HP, what we need to do is actually switch out Pokemon and then hope Ditto hits us with Pursuit. Which happens here. So that will cause Pidgey to faint. Then we'll throw out Typhlosion. Big deal. Just kind of how you expect it to be. But there's a little oversight where it seems like when switching out Pokemon, the game doesn't seem to understand to cancel the status effect. As you see there, Pidgey's still poisoned. And this can happen when using Revive, Max Revive, or even Rare Candy. Of course, Rare Candy has to be used outside of battle. On the wiki, the question was raised whether HP up would work, and I just tested it, it does not. And that's practically all it is. And sure, it's not super helpful, but I guess it is nice to know that that's a possibility if you ever encounter that on your own. The next 2 tips and tricks require us to trade. So I have 2 games here, Gold on the left, Pokemon Yellow on the right. You'll also notice that we need 5 question marks FF. It is a glitch Pokemon that has some interesting properties. It is the equivalent of Q or Charizard M from Generation 1. What it will do is hide Pokemon, but funnily enough, it does not hide their moves. So you need to make sure that if you want to transfer Pokemon from Gen 2 to Gen 1, you need to make sure they don't have any Generation 2 moves, which is exactly what we're doing here. It's called the Time Capsule exploit. It allows us to transfer Pokemon from Gen 2 to Gen 1, and vice versa if we want. However, it does not matter in Gen 1 if they're glitch Pokemon. By default, they're allowed to come over, because the game just looks at it as the Pokemon it corresponds to. So for example, Chikorita is 4-4, or Index 191 in Generation 1. Another thing that I had not mentioned yet, that I should, is that it's good to put 5 question marks FF at the end of your party before you trade. Another thing is you should only make 1 trade when doing this with 5 question marks FF, because when you do more than 1, any Pokemon that is underneath it will get changed into 5 question marks 00 or index 00 essentially. You'll notice here that we traded over a Graveler from Gen 1. However, with 5 question marks FF in the party, when it goes underneath it, because that's where the Pokemon go once they're added to the party, they're hidden, and it didn't make Graveler evolve. Because if you know, when you trade a Graveler, it's supposed to evolve. So we can even see here, another example, Cyndaquil is P Pokemon P, or Index 194. So I am cutting some of it out because we don't need to see it all. I will say I definitely love seeing this. It's so fun being able to trade on the same device. Hadn't mentioned it earlier, but Index 191 or 4-4 had a blacked out screen, so it just kind of blacked out on yellow. And then P Pokemon P has a similar effect, but it's not as intense or absolute, if you will. So we're actually able to see through it a little bit. And finally, our last trade is going to be Apom. That will give us Z, which is a Pokemon that we've seen before if you've seen any of my series of Let's Glitch Pokemon Yellow. or if you've seen any of Miss No Experts, Let's Glitch Pokemon Yellow. And there's Apom. So it comes through a Z right there. It should look familiar. We'll talk more about it later. Trade completed. So now we'll notice here it seems like Gold doesn't have any more Pokemon, but it's just because 5 question marks FF is covering it. There's a Machoke that I sent over. Here's Graveler, but you'll notice that it's actually corrupted. It says number 255. But it's actually index 00. And if it wasn't hidden on Yellow's side on Gold's screen, I could switch it around technically, and maybe that would make it work. But it's actually gonna show up as 3 trainer Poke. So when we try to trade it here, and I'm just gonna trade over P Pokemon P because it's not worth showing off this time. You can see there 3 trainer Poke. Because it's yellow, it would be an M if it was red or blue. You can see the name over there in Gold was very, very weird. Probably has something to do with it being, for one, probably an unstable hybrid, and 2, it's a glitch Pokemon. So that part looks normal. So now watch this. There's our Snubble. What? 3 trainer Poke? It's just funny how it gets kind of corrupted like that. And I also love how you can see the sprite change each time. They all look different because Yellow and Gold's menu sprite are different for pretty much each Pokemon, so it's kind of neat. And finally, trade completed once again. So now what I'm going to do is show off the glitch Pokemon that we obtained in Yellow. And you can see we have a Slowpoke there, which is kind of fun. Yeah, Missy No, depending on what hex number or technically index it is, it will be a different Pokemon in Gen 2. So I'm just going to organize the party here, and then on that note about the Missy No, that one was technically a Heracross. I know I mentioned the Slowpoke, but that was just a funny thing that was showing up. But yeah, that Missy No I have corresponds to Heracross. But now it's time to check out these Pokemon in battle. Yeah, the sprites are inverted because of viewing the stats of this Chikorita here, or what it's actually called is 4-4. So I'm going to switch because it has that annoying black box effect, which is one of the reasons why I'm not really the biggest fan of that. And Abra's not either, he left. He took one look at Graveler there and just said, fuck that. So let's find another Pokemon that won't run away this time. But 4-4 is a pretty neat Pokemon. You can't normally obtain that with normal methods in Pokemon Yellow. That's the reason why I want to show it here. Because usually people use the Mew glitch to find index 191 to 199. But 191 or 4-4 likes to crash the game, so it's not really too doable. Graveler here just showing off because it's 3 trainer Poke, and 3 trainer Poke is an epic Pokemon. If you end up with one, be very happy because it has very good stats, as you can see there. And I also question whether that's the stats of Graveler or not, but I'm pretty sure it's 3 trainer Poke stats. Now we're going to take a look at Apom, or what I should say is Z. It almost looks like it has a Missy No-like sprite on the back, but it's not Missy No. It's its own Pokemon. It is a hybrid of Persian, of all things, which is pretty neat. What is funny though is that at level 224 it does evolve into Missy No. It does learn a decent amount of TMs, all pretty good. It does share the stats and typing of Persian, but it learns so many moves via level up, and a lot of them are glitch moves too, which is pretty neat. That's all there is to say about Z, so let's check out the other tip. So with this tip, if you remember earlier, I had the issue because of 5 question marks FF, it wouldn't allow Graveler to evolve. which was a problem because it's exactly what we want to happen. There's a little exploit that we can get when we have Graveler evolve on this screen. So we're going to do just that now. We're going to trade Graveler for Sandshrew. And I am going to cut that out. And now that that's taken care of, Graveler will want to evolve. Keep in mind, this Graveler's level 16. You can't legitimately get a Graveler at level 16. It evolves at level 25 from Geodude. So it will evolve into Golem, and Golem learns Magnitude at level 16. Which, as you should know, only exists in Generation 2. It does not exist in Generation 1. That being the case, that means we now have a Pokemon that's not from Gen 2, but it's found in Gen 2 with a Gen 2 move in here, which can't normally happen. With that being the case, if we check out Golem's stats, more specifically its moves, especially in Pokemon Yellow, you'll see there, it's TM22, which is a glitch move. How odd, because in Gold, it's Magnitude, no big deal, but we can actually trade him back, which is hilarious because there are safeguards in this game in Gen 2 to stop Pokemon with moves they shouldn't have in Gen 1 from going over. But this bypasses that. So we're going to trade Machoke. Machoke's another Pokemon that can actually benefit from this to give a glitch move. However, it's not the right level. I just wanted to show one anyway to begin with. If you guys are interested in seeing more of these though, please let me know and I'll be sure to include that in a future video. Now that that's taken care of, Machoke will evolve into Machamp. It does not learn a move because it's not the correct level, but like I said, it can be done with Machoke Machamp. And something else that's also pretty epic about this is that this is one of the only ways to obtain certain glitch moves without cheats, if not the only way to obtain some of these glitch moves. So now we're going to back out and check out what that move does in Pokemon Yellow. Now let's get into a battle and see what this move does. So, you might know that the moves in Generation 1 tend to have shit accuracy. And they really do. Like, I think some of the best I've seen is somewhere around in the 50s. Which is still pretty meh. Like, I remember being younger, I would never use moves that couldn't hit all the time. It was just so annoying. Like, if there was a chance of it missing at all, like, nope, not using it. So we can see here, when we use it, it kind of looks like Cut in a way, or even like Vine Whip. And you'll notice it did half HP. You notice it did half HP again. So for that reason, it's very similar to Super Fang. So it seems like just a worse version of Super Fang. Which is alright. I mean, it's still pretty cool. But that is going to conclude today's video. I want to take a moment to thank you for making it this far in the video, as it went on quite long. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and please feel free to let me know if there are any tips that I didn't include in this video that you either heard of or would like to have seen included in this video. If you enjoyed, perhaps give a like and share so others can see. If you are interested in seeing how to obtain 5FF, check out this video here. And once again, thank you guys so much for watching.